Patch 9.3 dropped recently, and it's really good. A lot of weaker options got good buffs, some stronger options got reasonable nerfs, and while some things may not have got enough, and some things they were too harsh on, it still did a good job overall at keeping things balanced and keeping the meta new and interesting. Okay, we need to talk about it. So basically, the devs took the 30 hitbox on Ultra Stamp and made it do 60, and then they took the old 60 hitbox and made it one-shot you, which is kind of a really big hitbox. So I'm not saying this makes Ultra Stamp broken. This doesn't really matter for experienced players almost at all because you just move out of the way. But the problem is it doesn't fix any of Stamp's fundamental issues almost at all. They did improve basically the only redeeming part of Ultra Stamp being the throw mode, but they did it in an unhealthy way that's just annoying, not deserved, and entices not even using the other mode. I swear, most of the Ultra Stamp users I've fought nowadays after this change so far don't even try and use the rush mode, they just throw it immediately, just trying to get an easy kill. So essentially, it's like a slower, less effective Zuka. Most of the time you just end up wasting the special anyway. Now, I wouldn't be talking about this if the devs haven't done this in the past, because I really have an issue with the let's make the damage radius bigger and call it a day kind of change. And the funniest thing is, the one special that actually needs this change hasn't gotten it. Anyways, let's look at when they've done this in the past and take a further look to understand why it's bad. So the first time they did this was with Triple Ink Strike, where they increased the radius of the strike by 10%, which now is seeing long-term effects today with Objective Cheese, and has never been changed since. I don't really think Strike needed this. The main issue at the time, if I recall correctly, was the fact that you couldn't use Swim Form while using it. And at the time, it was literally a niche pick for countering Crab because of how well you could displace it. However, you could argue it had some issues with power, but I'm not sure if that change was the way to go about it, especially because it also got the Touch of Death change. And then Reef Slider got the same change, twice. They also increased the paint radius too, and while it was toned back later a little bit, it's still also seeing long-term effects today with Objective Tees, and by far more than any other painting special in the game. The main issue with Reef Slider still persists, by the way. It's way too vulnerable at the start and at the end of the special. However, I can applaud them for one of the two good changes they've done for this special, being the change to the rail paint. Anyways, they did the same thing with Vac, twice again, and the special still sucks because of how easy it is to kill and because it takes away your main weapon for 6 seconds. And then the same thing happened with Inkjet, and that defined a whole meta, but you get the point. Literally all of the specials they gave this buff to didn't necessarily need it. And the same issues that made the specials bad in the first place are still there. The only exception maybe is Booyah Bomb, which I can say benefited from this change in a good way. But even that has niche Objective Cheese issues, though it is a much better special now. And it's not really that great at cheesing zone anyway. What they do need are changes and buffs that make their weaknesses less apparent. For example, instead of giving a large buff to a few attributes of it, you can give smaller buffs to several attributes of it. This works much better because you're making the whole thing slightly better, so you don't really have a reason to use one specific part of it, because they all serve their purpose well. When you give one part of a special a massive buff, you're giving it an advantage over the other ways to use a special, which is what we're seeing now with Stamp, and what we also saw with Reef Slider, where instead of going for the one-shot, you try and use the large 70 hitbox to get cheap chip damage from afar, which genuinely made it so unnecessarily annoying to fight, and it didn't address any of Reef Slider's major issues. And it's not like they just started doing this in Splatoon 3, because in Splatoon 2, in patch 1.3, they gave Stingray a massive shockwave radius that does the same amount of damage as the regular radius. So if a global range laser that goes through walls was not broken enough, they just made it much easier to use. This defined Splatoon 2's meta for a while, and from patch 2.0 onwards, it only got nerfs, and it was still broken because it kept that one attribute that they overtuned. And they also kinda did this for missiles in Splatoon 2, which were already good, by increasing the paint with special power up in 2 separate patches, but I haven't really heard a lot of people talk about this compared to Stingray or Reef Slider. Also, in that patch, missiles got multiple buffs and a single nerf to try and balance it out, rather than only increasing the paint radius. Obviously, it was overbuffed a little bit though. Now, there's one special that should have gotten this change, which is currently one of the most underpowered specials in the game, and it's Wavebreaker. This special has needed a change like this for a while. By the way, Wavebreaker has only had some sort of balance change once in the entire game's lifespan, and it was more of a rework than a buff. But other than that, its entire version history is all bug fixes. Do they genuinely think that this special is in a good spot? I just think it's funny that they're giving this change to random specials that don't even have hitbox or consistency issues, or issues with power whatsoever. But the one special in the game that has both of those issues, that actually warrants having this kind of change, just hasn't gotten it, and it remains at the bottom of the barrel because of it. So the takeaway from this should be that making the damage or paint radius of a special massive is bad most of the time, and there are much more creative ways to buff a special that should be done rather than this. Overall though, aside from the Ultra Stamp change, the patches have been consistently improving in quality, and they're successfully helping the meta evolve in a healthy way, which is a really great thing to see at the end of the game's lifespan. It's really great to see that the devs are very well starting to understand how the game works and what players want, and I hope patches continue to show the same trends in the future. Anyways, have a good one.